TCU was a bye-week loser this weekend, and not because of anything that happened with them. They didn't even play, but everything they wanted to happen around them didn't. Oh, yeah, it's Locked on Horned Frogs. Play my music.
You are Locked on Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Have you been waiting 2 weeks for the return of Locked on Horned Frogs? If so, you're not alone. Matter of fact, I've been waiting so long, I decided I'd do it myself. My name is Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, 817 raised, site expert at Who Dat Dish, and contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked on Horned Frogs your first listen of the day every day. I know it's been a while, so for you to come back so quickly, I appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody who followed me over from Locked on HBCU. I'm not new to the network. I'm just new to this platform. So hopefully we get as acquainted as everybody did at Locked on HBCU. But this is Locked on Horned Frogs, a new chapter in my life, and I'm excited to share it with you. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We'll wrap up today's episode by taking a look at why the mentality of TCU is extremely important this week as they need to avoid the trap game. Segment 2, we have 2 transfer portal additions that not only impacted the North Carolina matchup, but I foresee them being extremely impactful and 2 of the most impactful players, not just transfers, but players on the 2025 season for the Horned Frogs. But unfortunately, after such a bang at the beginning of the season, week 2 was not kind to TCU. Did they play? No, because they didn't play, they didn't lose, right? That is something that is indisputable. But in my opinion, they still walk away from this bye week as a loser because of everything else that happened around them. Everything that happened around them went in the opposite direction of what I would have painted. If I could go in with my little crystal ball and I could say, you know what, this is how we're going to do it. And all right, this team's going to beat this team and this team's going to lose to this team and this team's going to play really close. I don't think that the majority of games would have went the way that they went if I had control. But that's not how it works. You play the game and you see how it turns out. For TCU, you look at games like Baylor versus SMU. You look at games like Arizona State versus Mississippi State, Kansas State versus Army. These games did not go the way that they wanted. And I'm going to break down the direct impact, but I want to say this first. Everything isn't terrible. TCU can still, create their own path to the top 25. Right now, they're sitting right outside of that quarter, but I think that they can push there. I just think that the path is going to take longer. The path is more about self and less about what others have done because others have dropped the ball. I believe that over the next 3 to 4, 5 weeks, if they continue to win, you'll see TCU in the top 25. But the thing is, TCU was supposed to be playing for a chance to be in that top 25 in 2 weeks. I know I'm going to look ahead for a second. I don't play for the team. I can do that. TCU was supposed to be in the top 25 with a win over SMU, but I don't know if that's going to happen anymore. Will it still be a solid win for the Horned Frogs? 1,000%. But will it be the win that pushes them into the top 25? I'm a little bit unsure about that now because everything that transpired this weekend really does take down the strength of schedule for TCU. Because when you look at it before the year, you're looking at probably 4 to 6 potential ranked opponents. And the reason I say 4 to 6 is you take into account who was ranked at the beginning of the year, teams that you think have a chance to be ranked by the time that TCU plays them. And you probably don't take away teams that you believe are fraudulent top 25. So the list just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Like Baylor, for example, was a team that was on the fence. If they were going to be able to knock off Auburn, we'd be probably looking at a top 25 team. But as you go through the schedule and you look at who TCU plays, it goes from 4 to 5, maybe even 6 potential top 25 matchups to right now being 1. And that's not good because in college football, your resume does matter. especially when you're a team like TCU. In the midweek presser, you heard Sonny Dykes talk about how they're going to have to work a little bit harder to get attention. I know that the playoffs have made college football a little bit more NFL-ish, but it's still college football, which at the end of the day means that narratives matter, the way you look matters, style points matter. It really does. When you're looking at college football, it's not the same where records are records. Let me give you an example. In the NFL, we are going to talk. Don't get it twisted. We are going to have conversations, but a 12-5 team is the same as another 12-5 team. You have tiebreakers and things like that to figure it out, but a 12-5 team is a 12-5 team. That's not the case in college football. That conversation that I talked about that we'll have, is this 12-5 team better than this 12-5 team? That's not only something that we will have in college ball, it's something that we have to have. We have to split those hairs. We have to find a way to divide. And with the Big Ten and the SEC trying to find a way to exclude pretty much everybody else from any non-automatic qualifying bids into the college football playoffs, I don't know if having only one ranked victory on their resume in 2025 is going to be enough for TCU to inch in. Now, we'll see how everything happens. Maybe Baylor goes on a run and maybe Baylor becomes a top 25 team. But as it stands, the games that I had my eye on for this weekend did not go the way that I wanted it to. I wanted TCU to have as many ranked opponents as possible because those things look good. Those having 3 top 15 wins tells the committee and anybody voting, hey, this is a competent team. This is a team that we can put in the playoffs. The Big Ten and SEC are going to push. I don't know how many ACC schools get in. I don't know how many Big 12 schools get in. I don't know. Do you get 2? I think that's a solid bet that you probably get 2 in, but TCU is going to have to make it to the Big 12 championship. Really, they're going to need to win it, because if they don't win it, I think having only maybe Iowa State on their resume as a top 25, top 20 victory, that could come in to bite them at the end of the season. So let's not go around why this is so important. Let's get specifically into the games that did not pan out the way that TCU would have hoped for them to pan out. And it starts off with 11 o'clock, 11 a.m. I remember exactly where I was. I went to go deliver something from a girlfriend. And then I said, you know what? It's time to watch football. No, I went to pick something up from the store. I went to deliver something from my girlfriend a week ago before my HBCU games last week. But this week, I went to pick up something for myself from Kohl's. But it took a little bit longer than I expected. So I was in there at 11 a.m. watching Baylor versus SMU on my phone. So that game is exciting. Baylor, SMU, battle in Texas. It's cool. Great. You want SMU to win. I know it doesn't feel like, well, don't you want the Big 12 to look strong? Yes, but I also wanted SMU to win so that when I played them in 2 weeks and I came out victorious, I could have the Big 12 looking good and I could be a top 25 team, because I do think beating a probably top 15 ranked SMU by that point would have put you into the top 25. As it currently stands, TCU is on the outside looking in. They're probably about 30-ish when you're looking at the votes. I don't remember the exact number or exact ranking. They weren't the next team up. But I think with a solid month of victories, you do see TCU get there. But the thing is, it wasn't supposed to be a month. It was supposed to be 2 weeks. It's supposed to be beat Abilene Christian, beat SMU, beat top 25. All right. But now you go through and you look at these teams. SMU falls from 16 to 17, and then they lose to Baylor and they fall completely out of the top 25. That's no bueno. That was supposed to be your first ranked opponent. All right, cool. Yes, the Big 12 gets a little bit stronger with that kind of win, but whatever. Kansas State, they were 17th and they fell out. Kansas State has really, in my opinion, failed completely through the first 3 games. They just lost to Army. And that was the biggest blow. But you look at it, prior to that, you lost to Iowa State. Well, somebody had to fall in that one. So that was a lose-lose. Somebody had to dip, and it was Kansas State. But the Army loss is the one that really stings. Because now you're out of the top 25. Iowa State, on the other hand, that was solid, because Iowa State beat Kansas State, as I mentioned, they climbed from 22 to 16. Then they went up to 14. But you got to wait till November 8th for that game. You have to wait till November 8th for that matchup. That's tough. So you had the you had the SMU game. They dropped. You had the Kansas State game. They dropped. But maybe the biggest blow, most shocking blow, I should say, the biggest blow was SMU because that was how could have got into that top 25 expeditiously. But that Arizona State game where they were 11, started off the year, fringe top 10 team. Then they dropped down to 12, and they lose to Mississippi State. I don't care that Mississippi State is an SEC school. I do not care about the reputation of the Southeastern Conference. Mississippi State has not beat a Power 4 school since October of 2023. And playing in the SEC, they had multiple chances. This is not the G5 school who just hasn't beat a P4 school in a while. Mississippi State played an entire year of SEC play, and they did not win a game. Towards the last back half of the 2023 season, they did not win a game. And they come in and they beat Arizona State. It felt like, the Sun Devils had put it together and they were able to surge and they were able to overcome a 17-0 deficit. Didn't happen. Now they're out of the top 25 because they lost to a team that hadn't beat a P4 school in 2 years almost. That's rough. BYU has gotten votes. They may be able to get there. Then you look at Baylor, who lost to Auburn. If Baylor would have beat Auburn, we're having a completely different conversation, but they didn't. So the only thing that went well for TCU is that North Carolina did not lose to Charlotte, so that win still has some steam. And Iowa State did not falter. So right now, Iowa State is the only team that is ranked on TCU's schedule. The only team. In a world that's all about narratives, that's not necessarily what you wanted to hear. But I will tell you something that you do want to hear, and that's that Kevorian Barnes and Jordan Dwyer are not only impact players for the game we watched last Monday, but I think that they are impact players for the duration of the Texas Christian schedule. Let's get into this as we continue with Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. I'm not joking. It's that quick. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keeps you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. I need that. I need great customer service. It makes me feel at home, and that's why the only place I will ever go is Supply House. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Join the free Trade Master program today. It's simple. Join it today, and you get some serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just suggesting strongly that you visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. And college football is back. I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. College football is a unique experience. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. I need me something to drink after that. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. I don't want any of that, which is why I only go to Game Time. I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans, and it's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. And for me, that transparency goes a long way. Pulled up Game Time, $50 tickets to the home opener. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets today. Visit Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. As we continue rolling on Locked On Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Big 12, because we just talked about how everything went wrong for TCU, but not everybody around the conference feels that way. So go ahead and check out what our fellow Big 12 colleagues are discussing on Locked On Big 12. Two transfers came up big versus North Carolina. I'm not going to only isolate that conversation to the North Carolina game because that was a week ago. But what I will do is highlight the impact of Kevorian Barnes and Jordan Dwyer on the North Carolina game while also looking forward to the rest of the season. These are two transfers that instantly caught my eye. And with them being guys who weren't with the team last year, I said, you know what? This is a good way to really bridge the gap, between the Locked On Horned Frogs that maybe you used to know and the Locked On Horned Frogs that I hope that you get to know with me hosting. Transfers. I'm a transfer. Barnes a transfer. Dwyer a transfer. Some of my friends from Locked On HBCU are transfers, but we all in this together, right? Zac Efron, Vanessa Hudgens, we all in this together. But yeah, let's start off with Barnes because I feel like he's the obvious one. He's the one that jumps off the screen. He's the one who had the 75-yard touchdown run that really felt like Bane breaking the back of Batman, except this isn't a movie. There is no, oh, you broke your back? Let's go through a training montage of you figuring it out. No, Bill Belichick is staying in the darkness, okay? And that's what that last, it wasn't the last, but it was the first play of the third quarter. That's what it felt like to me. It did. You add in the commentary of, man, you know, they really need a stop. And then boom, Barnes, 75, touchdown. You know, I thought that Barnes really showed a really good balance of long speed, toughness, and vision. He showed a lot to me in his 100-plus yard performance that says we're going to be okay. And this is a TCU group who, listen, let's be honest. Where was the confidence level when it came to running backs? Where was the confidence level? So it was through the dirt. You've seen multiple people say that TCU is one of the worst running back units in the Big 12. Last year, you had one of the worst rushing performances in the country. You had to have Savion Williams come in, and he'd be a guy who was a gimmick player, had a lot of wildcat. It was just gimmicky. And you had to use that to try to revitalize a poor rushing attack. Cam Cook goes to Jacksonville State. Insert Kevorian Barnes. And I think that you have your guy. Like, yeah, there was other people who ran the ball well, right? You had Nate Palmer, who ended with 7 for 61. You had Payne, who had 7 for 28. Like, you had some guys who played well. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. But Barnes is your guy. Through week 1, it feels like Barnes is your lead running back that will carry over until someone dethrones him, and I don't really see that happening anytime soon. But TCU has themselves a running back. They have a running back that should create excitement. They have a running back that shouldn't put you at the bottom of the country yet again. And when it comes to the other transfer that I wanted to highlight, you have Jordan Dwyer. If you don't mind, allow me to take another trip down memory lane. Last year, Jack Betch, 1,000-yard receiver. Eric McAllister, right behind him, 762. John Paul Richardson, 733. Savion Williams, 611. No one else surpassed 200. So when you're going into this year, it feels like, okay, Eric McAllister, that's going to be your number one receiver. He's going to be your guy who is your engine. I would say this pass or the past game versus North Carolina kind of transpired like a team that said, we're not going to let your one wide receiver beat us. And Josh Hoover said, one wide receiver? You must not know. I got Jordan Dwyer, Marcus Allen, get acquainted. And surely, I think it was actually pretty difficult for Marcus Allen to get acquainted. He was trying to. All my sources say that Marcus Allen actually thinks that Jordan Dwyer is a pretty good guy. He just couldn't stay within 5 yards of him when he was running routes. You know, so they didn't really get to build a great rapport on the field because it felt like every time that Hoover needed something, he looked for Dwyer, and Dwyer had Allen beat. It felt like it kept being Allen the whole time. So, you know, all jokes aside, it does feel like if you want to key in on McAllister, that's fine because we still have Dwyer. If you want to key in on this guy that you feel like was going to be our top wide receiver, we still have another guy that we can throw the football to. So don't even worry about game planning for one. I don't think that schools moving forward are going to say, stop McAllister at all costs and we'll be okay. Dwyer is going to have to prove that he can do this. So is Barnes. This is the thing. Barnes is coming off of a less utilized year at UTSA. But prior to that, he did have a good season. So when we're talking about repetition, I do have really do have trust that he can repeat this performance. But both Barnes and Dwyer are going to have to show that what they did against North Carolina wasn't a fluke. And matter of fact, I think that could be said about TCU as a whole, that they have to prove what they did wasn't a fluke. I don't think that they'll have troubles proving that this week against Abilene Christian, but I do have to warn, don't take the cheese and please avoid the trap game. I'm going to break all of that down as we close out today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by the Game Cap. Now, quick question for you. For all of my college football fans out there, if you could go back in time, sit front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Now I know what you're thinking. Hat? Why are we talking about hats? Well, first off, I happen to like hats, okay? But also because these aren't just any hats. They're the same vintage styles that fans wore back in the 80s and the 90s. And guess what? They still go for the same low price that they did back then. I know everything gets ratcheted up, but here, when you use the code Locked On, you will get your vintage hat for $16.99. Head to thegamecaps.com. That is thegamecaps.com. Grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design and use the code Locked On for an exclusive discount because legends wear the game. And matter of fact, I'm thinking about getting that little, I call them safari hats with the wide brim. I'm thinking about getting, I got a big head, so I kind of got to make sure everything fits for me. But no matter your head shape, your head size, go to the game today. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On old habits die hard, right? Locked On Horned Frogs. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, my first time making that mistake on camera, but I'll tell you the truth, I recorded millions of times trying to get that out of my system. I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. As we get acquainted, know that on Mondays, I'm going to wear this Saints gear. All right? Win, lose, draw, it don't matter. I'm going to wear this Saints gear. I ain't saying every single week, but most times I'm going to wear the Saints gear. And I don't have buku selection. So you're going to see me run through some of the same gear. Bring on the trash talk. I welcome it. I welcome it. I really do. Anyway, avoid the trap game. Avoid the trap game. Avoid the trap game. If you are a TCU player or a coach, I have one piece of advice for you. Avoid the trap game. Like I said, I am a leader of the Saints division at Fansided. I'm the site expert of Who Dat Dish. So when it comes to New Orleans football, pretty tapped in, right? And I seen this quote from Tulane head coach John Summerall. And obviously Tulane had a big win to open up the season. I think everybody within the city was pretty excited about that. I was pretty excited about that. But Summerall had a quote after that week that read, in 2017, when I was at Troy, we beat LSU in Baton Rouge. The next week, South Alabama kicked our butt. They have my full attention talking about the week 2 opponent and not overlooking anybody. Let's be clear. TCU is not Troy. North Carolina is not LSU. And Abilene Christian is not South Alabama. The roles that these teams play within the world of college football, drastically different. But the roles that they play within the course of this conversation and in this little ecosystem are very similar. Is TCU beating North Carolina some David and Goliath moment? Not at all. What it is a team that was completely under-discussed. A team that was a guest star at the Bill Belichick showcase. That was not what Troy was. Troy was a G5 school that had no business beating LSU. And do I think that that was the best LSU team that I had ever seen? No, that was the year after Fournette. They had Danny Etling at quarterback. Darius Geis was a dog, but Darius Geis That was the year he tried to take over for Leonard, right? And he had his moments, 100% he had his moments, but that was not the best LSU team that I have personally ever seen. But it's still LSU. It's still LSU. And it's still an LSU that beat 2 top 25 teams in back-to-back weeks, the weeks prior, the weeks after that game. They knocked off Florida, who was a top 25 team. They knocked off Auburn, who was the 10th team in the country. So that was a big win for Troy. But that was like slaying a dragon. In this sense, it's kind of slaying the dragon, but it's more so Bill Belichick and not having to do with the school. Had nothing to do with North Carolina and the history that they have. It had to do with Bill Belichick and many people feeling like the GOAT would come into college football and get to dominating quickly. That didn't happen. You know why? They ran into TCU. But my thing is, if I'm trying to give some motivation, and it doesn't sound like TCU needs it, but if I'm trying to give some sort of motivation, all of that anger, all of that irritation that TCU had for not being mentioned when it came to North Carolina, go search up TCU football and tell me what you find about the school, about the team. Because what I find is a bunch of North Carolina articles. What I find is a lot of things related back to the game, but through a viewpoint of focusing on North Carolina. There is no TCU is this because this is what they did. It's North Carolina is this because look what TCU did to them. It's a big, it's a small change, but it's a big deal. Small change, but a big deal. Because there's no TCU-centric content being put out. To me, that is still the same lack of respect that you felt going into the game, not being discussed. And if that's going to be the attitude for TCU or around TCU, then the attitude needs to be, all right, well, I'm going to show you. And it does feel like that's what Coach Dykes has. Coach Dykes has a mentality of there's more that we're going to have to do at TCU to get noticed. We'll do it. We opened up the show talking about how long it may take for them to get into that top quarter, for them to get into that top 25. And I think it may take 3 to 4 weeks now, maybe 5 weeks now, when it could have just taken 2. We talked about this and why it's important because these things come into play in playoff conversations. Coach Dykes understands that. But to me, this is a game where you cannot fall victim. I gave everybody's part. Troy versus South Alabama was a conference game. That was a even playing field, and you just overlooked them because of what happened the week prior or 2 weeks prior. The actual analogy actually goes pretty well. It's not an exact parallel, but Troy had a bye week after knocking off LSU. No one wanted to talk about TCU. You knock off North Carolina, and then you have a bye week. This is the perfect time to lose the momentum after that game and to go up against Abilene Christian and be like, we got this. Because, like I said, ACU is not South Alabama. That's not a G5 school. That is an FCS school. And I have this saying that I like to use. When your foot is on someone's throat, it's time to put your heels through the dirt. Simple and plain. That means you don't ever let up. And to me, you have nothing really in common with Abilene Christian. TCU versus ACU, you are both in Texas and you both are Christian universities. That's it. The names sound very similar, but outside of your faith and location, we are not the same. I'm TCU. I'm P4. You're Abilene Christian. You're FCS. My foot is on your throat from the beginning of the game. And once that opening kickoff happens, it's time for me to sink my heels into the dirt. It's time for me to say, this is not a game. We've seen FBS schools play a little bit closer with these FCS schools than they should. Do not be one of those. Style points matter. How you win matters. I don't want TCU in a situation where they have to win the Big 12. Hopefully they win it, but I don't want them in a situation where they have to win it. Let's go ahead and put Abilene Christian out of their misery early. Don't give them hope early in the matchup. Come out, get a big lead, dominate in the trenches, do all the things that you did versus North Carolina. But first episode, hopefully we get to know each other a little bit more. I hope that you're back tomorrow. When we come back, we'll be discussing Sonny Dykes' press conference. I think it should be tomorrow. So we'll be talking, or today. So we'll be talking about it tomorrow. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, Take care. Stay blessed. Peace.